To close off our proceedings today, it's really exciting, great privilege for us to have Sir Mark Walport join us. So Mark is the Chief Executive of UK Research and Innovation. It's an enormous job, and he's been very supportive all the way through the Creative Clusters programme, the Audience of the Future programme. He's had Andrew Thompson in his ear, he's had Andrew Chitt in his ear, he's had me in his ear, lots of other people, and he's been very supportive and patient of us. I happen to know he is also a great supporter of arts and artistic endeavour. Not only do I know he's a great opera lover, I have just discovered that his son just won a Tony Award. Which I don't think that's news to anybody. I don't think anybody else much knows that. So that's quite an exciting connection to the creative industries. Mark's going to give his perspective on the creative industries, on how it sits inside UKRI, and he's going to close our conference. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, please, Sir Mark Walport.
Well, it's an enormous pleasure to be here, and in fact I've had a rather interesting day because I started the day opening the Thames Valley Science Park, and one of the points I made there was that if you look at the future, and actually it's a point that I've made in this room as well, we're at an extraordinary time. I mean, I don't need to go into the news, but it's a time where I think we have to think about what the future of the UK in the world is. And if it's not through innovation, then I think I'm not sure where we're sort of going to go in the future, because our major capital is our intellectual capital. You know, we haven't got huge natural resources, but we've got extraordinary human resources. And in a science park, which is going to focus to a significant extent, I think, on data science and technology, and I think we would all recognize that we're going through an amazing industrial revolution at the moment. And if you like, there's a push and there's a pull. And the push is that technology is just giving us the opportunity to do things that we couldn't have dreamt of. I don't think even the most far-sighted looking forward from 30 years ago would have appreciated where we are with the capabilities of essentially computer information technology. But the counterparty to that is that there's an enormous pull as well, which is that if we look beyond the sort of little local issues to the global challenges, we've got a planet with 7.5 billion people on it, with extraordinary demographic challenges. So the demographic challenges of Europe, of North America, of Japan, of aging populations, and the great triumph of healthcare, that we all live longer, but the great failure that we are ill for longer as a result. So we've extended lifespan, but we haven't managed to compress morbidity. And then you've got the demographic challenge in sub-Saharan Africa, in parts of South Asia, in parts of South America, of huge young populations seeking work, migrating for entirely rational reasons. And everything that goes with that demographic, which is the consequences for the planet in terms of pollution, be it carbon dioxide pollution or plastic pollution. And so that creates all sorts of needs for innovation. And I mean, it's worth looking, I think, at the UK's industrial strategy, because it picks 4 big and important areas that I think it's quite hard to argue about. Healthy aging, the future of mobility, clean growth, and AI and data science. And of course that's different from the others because it's an underpinning technology. But where have we got a competitive advantage? And I think an important part of our competitive advantage is how we humanize technology, science, engineering. And that's where the creative industries have an enormous amount to offer and have offered. So it is the power of the creative industries to humanize that technology and help us to provide products that will help us deal with those big grand challenges. I don't know how many of you saw the film on Sunday by Peter Jackson, They Shall Not Grow Old. I don't think in a way that was the most advanced computer technology, although it's pretty advanced, I think. But the way that film from the 1914-18 First World War was brought to life And it wasn't just colorization, although I think the colorization was an extremely important part of it, but it was taking really pretty manky analog film and turning it into something which provided a visceral experience of a sort that I think was very, very challenging. And then, of course, that was followed by a much more classical piece of the creative industries, which was the film Testament of Youth, Vera Brittain. And that reminds me to say that I think one of our important competitive advantages when it comes to the creative industries is content. And that's one of the things that we're so good at. And at the end of the day, it's content that is king. And the opportunity of the new technologies is to present content in ways that I think people are only beginning to understand the potential of. And so immersive technologies, which is one of the important areas for the Industrial Strategy Challenge, I think creates enormous opportunities. And so at UK Research Innovation, I think that we have to look through the lens of, and I've said it actually in this lecture theatre before, the first industrial revolution was, it's not a lecture theatre, it's a performance space. The first industrial revolution was powered by steam. It was the steam engine that powered it. But this industrial revolution, I think, is also being powered by steam, but it's science, technology, engineering, the arts, mathematics. And by the arts, I include the arts in the most holistic sense. And that, I think, is the enormous opportunity. And so I think that, and I want to pay tribute to Andrew Thompson, my colleague who was here, I know, earlier in the day, who, through his work as the leader of the Arts and Humanities Research Council, has really championed, I think, the creative everything from the fundamental discovery work in the creative area right through to the creative industries. He, and I want to say thank you to Anthony as well, and also to Andrew Chitty, have, I think, been instrumental in getting us to where we are today. I'm really delighted that the clusters have been announced today. They really do stretch the whole length and breadth of the UK. So England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there's some really good partnerships. I think there are some extraordinary opportunities. And so my perspective from UK Research Innovation is that our job is to support, if you like, the whole of the generation of knowledge in the first place. And that is everything from the work of the Arts and Humanities Research Council on the Wave, the print by Hokusai, which was recently displayed in the Hokusai exhibition at the British Museum, right through to the work on the discovery of gravitational waves. And I think that our challenge and our opportunity is actually to break down the rather artificial boundaries that there are between the different areas of knowledge generation. I'm a biomedical scientist by background, and one of the big challenges now in a world where we can sequence 100,000 genomes of people in the NHS is how do we display all those billions and billions of base pairs that comprise each of our genomes. And again, that is where the creative industries, where the arts design can help us to visualize the complexity of the natural world, be it a genome sequence, a piece of cellular machinery. And in a previous life, I was the director of the Wellcome Trust. And one of the things that I most liked each year was our Biomedical Images Awards, where you could see the extraordinary beauty of the natural world at everything from the macroscopic to the most microscopic level. And so the opportunity, I think, for the creative sector as a whole is to contribute to everything from, if you like, the purest culture performances of every sort, right through to what the creative industries have to offer in the world of design. And I think a good example, actually, is the company Improbable. And so Improbable started as a games company, creating either improbable or impossible worlds. But of course they realized that with their modeling technology, they could actually create models of real cities, real towns, real places. And that started to prove very useful if you're interested in the security of cities and towns. In other words, how to keep people safe. And so that's a company that's morphed from a gaming company into a much broader company whose modeling is applicable in many walks of life. And I think increasingly one sees the power of immersive technology, not only in giving people immersive experience in games, in theatre, in film, but suddenly it's a way of actually modeling products as an intrinsic part of their design. And one of the things that I did near the end of my last job as the Government Chief Scientific Advisor was produce a report on the power of modelling, modelling for policymakers. And many policymakers think of modelling in terms of financial spreadsheets and think of what happened and what went wrong with the accounting for the West Coast Main Line. But modelling is so much more powerful. And the ability to now model all sorts of products as part of their development and actually make it much more efficient and just design things in more beautiful ways, I think is absolutely extraordinary. But today, of course, is very much about the Creative Industries Cluster Programme. It's a significant investment. And of course, there's also, as part of the work, a new policy and evidence centre for the sector. And I think that's going to be really important. One of the big challenges if you're sitting in UK research and innovation is actually what happens to the money once it's got out of the door, and how can we demonstrate to policymakers and ultimately the taxpayers who fund the work that we support, how firstly can we demonstrate that we have an evidence base for what is going on, and how do we capture actually what's been discovered, invented, how our knowledge has been used and applied. And so having, I think, a policy and evidence centre is going to be really important, actually, because I think it's going to help all of us in this room, and I include myself in that, make the case that this is a wise use of the taxpayers' money and that it's something that we should continue in the future. And so what I would say is, with this clusters programme, I'm really excited about it. I think it is exactly the right thing. But what we have to do collectively is demonstrate over an appropriate timescale that this is a good use of all of our money as taxpayers. And we need to think of it not simply in terms of impacts, but also in terms of the outputs and the outcomes. Measuring impact is always something that takes quite a long time to do. But measuring the outputs and the outcomes, as opposed simply to the inputs, is something that I think is important and that we need to do continuously. And I do think that the policy and the evidence centre for the sector is very important. And of course, that's going to be led by Nesta. And Nesta, in fact, are now our landlords, because UK Research and Innovation, our London office, is based on 58 in Victoria Embankment, and we share a building with Nesta. So we'll be able to look down a floor or two and see what's going on a rather regular basis. But this is a significant industrial strategy investment. It's 39 million in all, and it becomes more than 80 million in total with matched funding. And I think that's just a more general point, which is that a great deal of the focus on innovation has been in roughly 20% of the economy, actually, which is the classic industrial manufacturing sector. But of course, 80% of the UK economy is actually in the service sector. And the creative industries are an extraordinarily important part of that, contributing many billions to the UK economy, and also a very important national cultural export as well. And I think we're going to have to think very hard about how we broaden that innovation across the service sector. And I think you're going to be an important part of that, actually, working with other industries in the service sector to help with innovation at a time when, going through this industrial revolution, the businesses of the future are going to look very different to the businesses of the past. And so the last time I was here, I was actually talking at the Creative Industries Federation annual meeting, not this year, but the year before. But their work has shown that the sector is worth £92 billion a year to the UK economy. Quite high, it's 92 as opposed to 91 or 94, I'm not sure, but it's a lot of money anyway. And about half of that is in exports. And of course, today has been about the creative industries, creative clusters, but we also have the audiences of the Future Fund, which has been going through a very active competition at the moment. Unfortunately, I can't formally announce the outcomes of that today, but I know that a number of the people that the announcement will be made in due course are in the audience, and I think that's going to be a really important initiative as well. And so I just want to end, and I can see that the clock in front says I've got 13 seconds to go, so I'm roughly on time. But I just want to end really by congratulating all of you. I think what you do is hugely important. Frankly, it is actually the creative industries that create some of the things that make life worth living. And so thank you to everything you do. Congratulations to all of you who are going to take part in the initiatives that we have the privilege of funding. Thank you to all of us that are helping us helping us to make this happen. And what I'm really looking forward to doing is seeing what happens over the next months and years, because this is an important initiative and we've really got to collect the evidence and persuade government that they should continue to fund this. Thank you for your attention.